How
That's
about
good.
yourselves?
That's good. All good now. All good now.
Flying.
All right. I can't see you boys. I don't know if that's probably a positive for you lads.
I just started my video there.
Oh, you lad.
I don't have any on I'm running this off my computer at home, so I have no video. So it's just the two handsome boys you get to see, Phil.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
So firstly, Phil, on behalf of all of us here at the weekly Armchair Kickoff, thanks very much for coming on. We're just a new podcast.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Good luck, lads.
It's an absolute pleasure. And look, Joe, for someone like yourself coming on, though, it's very nice of you, and thanks very much for that.
You don't have to say that. That's more than kind. And glad you are starting it, and good luck with it. And I'll help you with anything I can, lads. Not a problem.
Thanks very much, Phil. Top man.
No
so lads, the Premier League is back. So it was announced there recently that football is coming back. Project Restart. Joe, it's been given the go ahead. So how are you all feeling about it, lads?
Can't wait.
Phil, I'll come to you first.
Who are you asking first?
I'm asking yourself first, yeah.
Me? I mean, I'm looking forward to it. You know, I know there's different opinions on it. Some people think that it's not safe. Personally, I don't think you're going to get a perfect date of return until you get a vaccine. But
yeah.
you can't live like this forever. So personally, I'm looking forward to it. I understand that not everyone's happy, but the test results have been good. And so I think if players don't feel comfortable, then they're well within their rights not to play. And I don't think anyone should be judged for it. But honestly, I'm really looking forward to it.
That's great. And like, from my perspective, like football during this pandemic, I think football is going to give a lot of people some escapism from the pandemic. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be good to have it back on our screens, and especially for people in Ireland and the UK, it's a very big part of all of our lives. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's great for a lot of us that we're all like football fans of all different clubs, and it's going to give us something else to think about other than the pandemic, because you can't escape it.
Of course. You still thought on the weekend? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course, absolutely.
Thing, yeah.
I mean, of course, you know, like the other boys come in. I think there is a very real mental side to this for a lot of us, that you realise just how much these things mean to you. It's much more than a game. There is a hole in your life that is hard to fill with other things. So, you know, as far as my wife's concerned, the season hasn't ended. I've been lying just in case she thinks it's ended and I get asked to do something on a Saturday. So I said, no, watching matches 3 years ago. It's just started, love. So no, seriously, it's great to have it back.
It's fantastic. And Jamie, how are you feeling about the whole Project Restart?
Yeah, I suppose we've kind of spoke about over the last probably 4 to 5 weeks, and it's probably one of the reasons why we actually started this podcast in the first place was because of the void that was in our lives. And I suppose in the early podcast we kind of spoke about the safety aspect of it, and it seems that up to this point it's been done really well. Definitely a win for the Premier League in terms of how low the cases have been up to this point. So personally, I always wanted to get back as soon as possible. I know obviously the players' welfare is the first thing in hand, but the actual excitement that football gives us week in, week out, it's ingrained in our lives now.
Jimmy, you left the immersion on, mate. I'm joking. I'm joking. Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Fucking mad of your life. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's basically it really for me. I think that it really is something that we're all excited to come back, and I suppose all our clubs are in a fairly, I suppose on the call right now, Gary's a Liverpool fan, so he's probably really looking forward to getting it back. But I suppose from a Spurs, a United standpoint, there's still a lot to play for this season. Hopefully for us anyway. Yeah. But yeah, look, I'm really excited to it.
And then Gary, as a Liverpool fan, how are you feeling about the whole situation coming back?
Like I suppose I want the thing done and dusted at this stage. I want it over. I want that little asterisk that could be beside our league win, touch wood. But you know what? There's the Premier League's got so much more to play with. I think everyone will agree here the league is done, but like we've the top four, we've got relegation. Like, you know, there's what 6 teams going for what 2 Champions League positions left at the moment. Like, you know, that's going to be really fun to look at. From a Liverpool's fan point of view, I was always in that group of those 6 teams fighting for 2 Champions League places. It's actually real good to have the take away, I suppose, the pressure of looking at your team doing it. It's good to be on the outside looking in rather than being on the inside looking out. So that's what I actually can't wait for, is the run in for the top 4. It's going to be, it's every man for himself.
And with regards to this, Gary, like even with City's potential ban, do you know, with the Champions League, the proceedings started recently. Like, there could be 3 Champions League places up for grabs. Like, you just don't know what the whole, you know, court proceedings that's happening at the moment.
Realistically, yeah, no, it's going to be really, really interesting. Like, they're saying they're going to come out with they should know something by the end of July whether or not they will be. I'd say Phil will probably know an awful lot more about I suppose, the background to it all, but it's hard to see him getting 2 years when Chelsea's got reduced and everyone else's has got reduced. It could go down to a season, but if it goes to 2 seasons, like there are talks of City being down £200 million for those 2 seasons. So it's going to be really interesting to look at.
I think what will probably happen, usually these things end up on a compromise. They'll probably get a year. You know, it's bad enough for City when you've got a number of their players saying they want to leave if they don't play in the Champions League, Kevin De Bruyne being one of them. I honestly think that what is happening with this coronavirus will probably benefit Leicester more than anyone, because I don't think, like, say, James Maddison will be leaving Leicester this summer because it's just going to cost too much money. So they're going to get a renewed focus from their players to make sure they get into the Champions League, because a lot of those players won't be leaving. So I think it'll benefit them. Obviously, you know, with Liverpool, it has been unfortunate for them. They will win the league. They deserve to win the league. They've been by far the best team, as hard as it is for me to say that. They deserve to win it. It's robbed them a bit, and it's been anticlimactic for them. But you know, they have bigger problems ahead. If it's true the club hasn't got any money to spend, I think that is a big concern. It's a hard team to buy players for, because it's a team that's really plays above itself. It's a system team. It's a bit like Ferguson's teams, that not really any superstars, but they play a certain way, and it's hard to bring players in. Almost surgically you bring players in for that team, but they need to buy. And I think the likes of Salah and some of the other big players will be looking at that and asking themselves, you know, if you can't buy now, you know, if you've got money this summer, this is the perfect time to buy. You will get players on the cheap. And I think this will be the second season, really. Liverpool haven't done anything in the transfer market. You're not going to keep getting away with that.
I think, especially like from Liverpool, like looking at their whole overall squad, like there was talks from once that Timo Werner was going. Now look, he's going the direction of Chelsea. Like, as you said, like Liverpool will need to probably buy surgically, like, because it is a system team and they play with a really high press, so they need like a specific player to play in the system.
Well, I was listening to Didi Hamann talk about Timo Werner, and he said that he's a player that doesn't do well against teams that sit in deep against him and don't give him a lot of space. He's suited to a counter-attacking team, so I think he's actually quite suited to Liverpool, but more of someone to replace Firmino than anyone else. So yeah. I would imagine if Liverpool were going to spend 50 million on him, someone would be leaving. He's clearly not going to go to Liverpool. He's still on the bench. But you know, another number of clubs showed interest in him. You know, Bayern Munich wanted him last year. United wanted him. United looked at him too. It's a very, very good buy for Chelsea at a good price. If Liverpool are genuinely being priced out of £49 million moves, that would be very concerning for me, because club will have to sell to buy. And again, it's very difficult to get like for like. And if they lose one of those front three, I think Liverpool could find themselves in like, this is why I don't think Coutinho hurt them at all, because he wasn't really suited to the system that Klopp wanted to play. But I don't think he can lose any of his first 11. They'd be in big trouble.
it would hurt him, but look, I suppose at this point you kind of have to sit back and I suppose see what the landscape of the transfer window is like, especially with the current pandemic.
Yeah, I agree. I think we don't even know when a transfer window is going to happen. Quite ridiculously, I really don't understand this. I think we really overrate a lot of the business people in football, because when they took this transfer window and shortened it, it had a very predictable outcome that European teams would pick off their players. In the last 2 weeks of the window, 3 weeks when the English window was closed, and now they wanted a window that was going to mirror Europe's. Now they're going back to UEFA or FIFA and saying we want it from August to October. Well, I'm quite sure that other European teams will object to that for obvious reasons. So I think there's a lot of bluffers at the high end of clubs, to be honest.
In all walks of life.
I agree. All walks of life are absolutely right. But I genuinely don't understand what they expected was going to happen. You know, it was extremely predictable. But I don't know. I think you probably won't see a lot of big money moves. But if you do, you'll see players with huge add-ons where next year there'll be big add-ons on their contracts where they'll pay big money if they do well, because clubs will be really reluctant to lose players at a cheap price. This is going to happen with Jadon Sancho too. It's going to be a challenge for United to get him out of there. For Dortmund, doesn't really need to sell.
Yeah, and Phil, on the point of Manchester United, obviously back in January we brought in Bruno Fernandes, and he has to change like the whole vibe in the dressing room. Like he's come in and he's flourished under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. What do you think of the whole situation, the potential partnership between him and Paul Pogba? Do you think it will work, or do you think maybe that their styles could clash and it mightn't work in the end?
I don't see any way a fit Paul Pogba doesn't play in United's team, but this is where it's going to be really, really difficult, because that midfield three are very different players. McTominay's very different, Fred's very different, and so is Bruno Fernandes. So who do you drop out of that? Because they all complement each other. It's a bit like Liverpool. If you look at Liverpool's midfield, you know, it's not, Jordan Henderson's not a superstar, but they all complement each other and do very, very important jobs. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how Solskjaer manages this, because I really don't see how Fernandes and Pogba playing the same midfield, because I can't. How do you drop McTominay? He's a physical presence that they badly need. He's also tall.
Yeah.
You can't drop Fred since Spurs in December. It's been incredible. And it would really unbalance it. But you know, United have Pogba where they want him, because a year ago he had United where he wanted him. Now Paul Pogba has to play well and remind the world why he is a top footballer and not another Coutinho of an overpriced midfielder that didn't quite fulfill his potential. So it's a good situation for Solskjaer to have, and Pogba can't afford any more injuries or any more loss of forms, because if he genuinely wants to leave, no one's going to pay huge money for him unless he shows that type of form. I mean, you get fans on Twitter, but they're not writing Real Madrid's checks. So unless he shows that form, they won't be buying him. They can't afford to buy anyone this summer.
Yeah, and so especially at Real Madrid, like they don't seem like they're going to splash out big at the moment. Like, and you look at it maybe from a system point of view with Paul Pogba and Bruno. The one thing you can maybe do, I know like Fred's been fantastic, so is McTominay. I've seen people say maybe in Nemanja Matic sitting in that number 6 role to maybe free up the two lads. It's possible. That's what people are saying. What would you think if we done that with maybe a 4-3-3 formation?
But then he would have to drop McTominay and Fred. If you want to put 3 in the midfield, I don't see that happening. Paul Pogba can't play deep. He's been tried in that position. In fact, his worst ever game in that position was against Spurs for Mourinho away. We nearly conceded after 45 seconds. So, and it was his fault for not tracking runners. So he can't play in a defensive midfield. To be fair, it's, you know, you don't buy a Ferrari to be a Bentley, you know. So he's not that player. So Matic and Fred are the only 2 players that can play that position. You have to play either one of them. So really, it's a question of dropping McTominay, and I don't see that happening. I mean, he was absolutely immense when he came back. So it's going to be really interesting. When you talk about change, you know, Bruno Fernandes came into a different club that Solskjaer changed the working atmosphere at United, and so I think Solskjaer's continued to say how important that working environment is. Any working environment, anywhere you go to work, whether it's an office or a football club, you adjust to the environment of where you work. And so for Pogba, he's going to have to also adapt to an environment, and the way it was before will not be the same. So it will be really interesting. I would drop him. I would leave Paul Pogba on the bench because he hasn't done anything. You should be getting in the team of merit. And, they didn't lose any of their last 11 games.
Yeah.
Since Fernandes came in, so why change it?
Yeah. And look, if he can show the form he showed in the first 3 months under Ollie, when he does eventually get back into the team, happy days.
Well, he was the only player that could play that way for United, so United no longer, they were very one-dimensional without him. They could only play counter-attack football, but Pogba was the one player that could play that way. Even when he played for a short bit of time against Watford, he was doing things that other midfielders couldn't do. They were so badly missing that creative player, but they aren't anymore. And so, Paul Pogba is 27. It's time. Either you show you're a world-class player or you don't. And most players who are considered world-class at this stage don't have the question marks hanging over them. Paul Pogba has. What's his best position?
Yeah.
I don't know.
At 27 years of age, that's from 27 to 30 is meant to be your peak.
Most world-class players at this stage are already confirmed world-class, and you don't know. You don't ask what's your best position. I still don't know what Paul Pogba's best position is.
And Phil, just one final one for you, just in regards to Manchester United. With us being, in obviously still in the Europa League, and we're in the FA Cup as well. We're in the latter stages of that. What do you think is a realistic expectation we can have as fans in terms of what we can finish the season?
I think the top 4 is realistic. Why not? If that's not their objective, then something's seriously wrong. And I also think that if they don't look at either one of those trophies as very winnable, then there's something really, really wrong with the mentality. They're playing well. United team that's playing well still have a lot of quality. They should be looking to win both of those tournaments. But really, it's going to be a test to show that they're actually building on some solid foundation rather than just patchy form. It's a tough game. Spurs away is a tough game for United. It's not a great Spurs team. It's a Spurs team that needs a lot of money, needs rebuilt, but it's a hard away game. Mourinho will be desperate to win that. So it's going to be questions asked United. So I think top 4 and they should be looking to win both those trophies.
And that imagine like a Christmas when we were struggling. If you told me a Christmas that top 4 and maybe do an FA Cup final or win the FA Cup and maybe get the Europa League final, like I would have taken your hand for it. Like, do you know what I mean? Absolutely. Look, I hope. I just want Champions League football next year. I just want to see Man United back in the Champions League and get Champions League lights back in Old Trafford.
Well, to me, I want to see a United team that's capable of competing in the Champions League. Champions League is a financial goal, not a business, not a football goal. Just qualifying for it is a business goal. If you haven't got an objective to actually compete in it and try to win it, then it doesn't mean anything. It might mean something to people above Solskjaer's head, but it's very hard to build a working environment, a positive working environment. When you heard what Patrice Evra said about Woodward earlier in the week, where he said that he went back on a promise to let him leave. And how can you keep players happy when the people above you are doing things like that? It's impossible. And also said that Woodward called himself the director of football. That's a big problem.
A very big problem. Gary, I understand you have a few questions for Phil.
Phil, mine are more based around I suppose your career. Who's been your biggest inspiration, as a journalist? Who really has taught you the most about the industry?
I don't have one single person. When I started this 10 years ago, it was just like yourselves, lads. It was just an outlet to talk football. So I didn't really have any objectives, and I didn't really have any ambition of it going anywhere. We bluffed our way. We were emailing clubs all over the world, spoofing. We were telling them we had a big, massive audience and could we speak to their players and brass knuckling it, and most of them chased us, but I dealt with 5 listeners. But every once in a while, someone would say yes, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way. What I tell people doing this for the beginning is like, look, don't chase money or fame or anything like that, because you're not going to get it. If you do this for the love of it, it'll come through, it'll shine through, and it won't change your relationship with the game. Once you start wanting financial returns and you start wanting things back from it, you become bitter when it doesn't happen. Most podcasts fail after about 4 or 5 podcasts because they realize they're a lot of work. And most of the stuff outside of this is very difficult. But for me, it was when we started it, I would advise this to anyone: never make any podcast about one particular club, because it's really, really limiting. So we were lucky. We came along at a time when podcasts weren't saturated, where everyone didn't have one. So, but we signed contracts with big broadcasters out here, with NBC and stuff, which was a massive mistake, because they don't promote your content. You get lost and you actually lose listeners rather than grow. Plus, they heavily censor what you can say, and so they become boring. Just building relationships with people, building trust with people. We built a big relationship with United, which we got very lucky with. And then we did it with other clubs, and we asked for content. Most of the time they don't give it to us. We were lucky in the sense that I'm here in LA. They wanted to be in the American market. So when they don't give us interviews, we'd ask for like signed shirts, stuff to give away in co-promotion. We've done tons of those. We're doing one right now with Bayern Munich, with Manuel Neuer. And so we just kept getting creative and making sure we weren't trying to copy what Sky Sports were doing, because they have all that analysis market wrapped up. You have to do something completely different, or you won't get downloads. People won't give you any. You have to do something that other people aren't doing. And so in the beginning, it was all about bringing on big players and developing relationships with those people. But that's really hard to maintain. So we got signed by a big radio network out here, which helped us a lot. So I can't say there was one particular person. I have to say the biggest person that's allowed me to do this has been my wife. I have 4 kids, and I don't know how long you lads have been following me for, but I've had a lot of difficulties the last 10 years in my personal life that I've been quite open about. And so the podcast, doing this, has really helped me a lot with dealing with the mental side of everything that I've had to deal with in my personal life. So without her, though, I couldn't do it, because sometimes this takes up 12 hours a day. Like, people don't realize that. People think that it's just recording. It's not. I mean, it's chasing content, it's chasing good content, it's chasing partnerships, it's trying to figure out ways to get into football clubs so that they trust you. It's just a lot of work. And so people only see the end result of that, the interviews. But for us to get those interviews, we had Michael Carrick on last week. United hate my content because I'm critical of a football club, but they still work with me. So it's hard, lads, and you'll find it hard too. It's tremendous, because the payoff. Like, I did an interview just before this. I'm not even going to broadcast it, because it was with a professional footballer, and it was on a Zoom video. And I happened to ask him in the middle of the interview if he had any mental health issues, and he first of all said no, and I could tell that he was lying. So I stopped the recording, and I asked him again, and he just broke down and cried for about 20 minutes, and then told me everything that's going on in his life. And these are the things that make this worthwhile, because it's brought a lot of amazing people into my life that I otherwise never would have gotten to meet, and making human connections with people, and which transcends the celebrity, football, anything else. And so you never realize who's listening to your content. You never realize who you're reaching. And there's just a lot of people out there that are going through really difficult times. And sometimes your podcast can be the thing that reaches them. So honestly, that's been the greatest payback for me, is being the people that have reached out to me that have been struggling with things in their own life. Many of them professionals in the game, and that have shared things with me I would never share with anyone else. But it surprises me because you never expect these people, because they just don't have that personality that you think is dark. But it's just a reminder that there's so many people out there struggling. So without my wife, I couldn't do it, and without players trusting in me, clubs trusting in me, I couldn't do it. So I'm quite fortunate, lads.
Oh, that's brilliant. And cheers for that, Phil.
Thank
Like
you.
you answered my other question in regards to helping people. Like, you've often talked to people, you've given that outlook just for them to actually have a chat.
Absolutely.
Because yourself, they can't go into a dressing room and pull someone to a side and tell them some of the stuff that they maybe have told you. So look, that's really good. That's actually put a smile on my face that you've actually shared that with us. But no, listen.
But to be honest, lads, it's not just players or journalists. It's people like yourselves. I mean, every human being is equal to me, and so anyone starting a podcast, I will help anyone, because I started with nothing too. I started with no listeners. I started with no followers. I started with all of that. I remember my first couple of weeks doing this. We were terrible. The audio was terrible. Everything was just atrocious. So we were lucky that we had no listeners, because we were able to make all the mistakes with no one listening to improve. And people want to start out with huge audiences, and I tell them don't, because that's a mistake. You need time to improve it and get better and grow organically. But truthfully, lads, mental health where we come from is a serious problem. And so I think anyone who's lucky enough to have a platform, whether big or small, it's incumbent upon all of us to let people know it's okay not to be okay. It's all right. I've spoken to people. I did an interview 2 weeks ago with Cal Martino, who, is very big out here. He played for the United States, played for LA Galaxy with Beckham. His mother-in-law is Susan Sarandon. He's a very, very close friend of mine, has struggles badly with mental health issues, and talked in depth about them on my podcast. And I've done this with other people too. And it's the result of that is ordinary people reaching out to me. I'm not always available for them because I struggle with my own issues, but I'd be there for anyone who's struggling because I would never leave someone alone, because I know the consequences of that. But it's just so important that one of the things that we're doing on BTP, we're starting a BTP Health and Wellness channel. It starts next week. And on that, we're going to have different doctors from different disciplines uploading podcasts on there, psychiatrists, addiction specialists. We're going to have people up there like I've got Tony Ferguson from UFC, his trainer, I know really, really well. He's going to be uploading workout videos for kids, workout videos for adults, nutritionists up for people on their diet, and bunch of boxers that I know very well, professional fighters. They're going to be doing a bunch of stuff for me, and there's going to be a bunch of stuff on there for people to contact these doctors and what have you if they're struggling in private, because I want to do more than just talk about it. I want to provide resources for people to get help and try to normalize certain conversations about, because when I hear politicians talk about addiction stuff, they don't understand it. They don't understand the difference between dependency and addiction, which are very different things. And like I said, I think it's really, really important, not just for lads, for girls too, but I think it's really important. And as you lads grow, I hope you also realize your responsibility goes beyond just telling football stories, because there's going to be people listening to your stuff and in their cars, walking their dogs that will feel alone, and you may be the only voice in their ear to let them know that it's okay and that it's safe to reach out. And you'll be surprised. There's probably 1 in 3 people struggling.
Yeah, and look, Phil, that's absolutely that's after blowing my mind. It's unreal stuff you're doing, and look, you're an absolute credit. You're an absolute credit, and look, that's just unbelievable. Well,
thank you, lads. And anything I can help you lads with at all, just let me know. It's great that you boys are doing this, and it's great that there's a mix of different fans from different clubs. It's not just Manchester United, there's Liverpool fan here. I think it's great you're doing this, and I love to see lads from home trying to make a go of it, trying to be something, trying to do something. And I think it's great, and I wish you'd nothing but the success with it.
Absolutely, and we actually were doing this before, Joe, like before we started doing the podcast, we were doing like video calls like this on Facebook Messenger. We were having chats, and then Gary suggested to me, because I've always wanted to do it, but I've always been too kind of shy to start a podcast. And
Sure.
Gary said, "Look, you get nothing in life if you don't try it." Like,
That's right.
Look,
and I've been absolutely right. I've been told my whole life, when I went to school, everything, I didn't leave school with a single exam. I failed everything. I failed fucking PE. Who fails PE? Right? And so always told never be anything. So I've always taken a chance. Why not? Why does it have to be someone else? Why not you? And just remember, everybody started from nothing. So, it's okay. What I've realized as I've accumulated success in certain areas is that what I've built them up to be in my head is not what they really are. And they're all very achievable. So sometimes being Irish, we have a tendency to put ourselves down a wee bit and think that success is for other people. But that's not true. And thankfully we've in recent times seen a lot of our athletes be very successful, which has given the country confidence that we can be successful too. So, lads, there's nothing holding you back. Anything that's holding you back is imaginary, So just don't let doubt hold you back, because you can do anything you want.
Absolutely, and that advice. Thanks very much, Phil.
No problems, lads.
And Jamie, I understand you had one or two questions for Phil.
Yeah, really quick question for you, Phil. I know you have your other podcast with Wayne McCullough with the it's the Weigh-In Boxing podcast, I believe.
Yeah.
In terms of, obviously you're really passionate in terms of podcasts and radio and stuff. What was the catalyst for you when you were younger? Was it a moment, or was it a certain boxer that got you into boxing? The very same way that Man United would have got you into soccer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, growing up when I was a kid, Barry McGuigan was big when I was young, right? So obviously I was born in Belfast, so troubles were mad when I was growing up. So fighters were metaphorical of life for us, where we would see our own struggle in the fighters. So boxing was very important to kids from Belfast. I boxed too when I was a child. So he was the first one, and then there was a dearth of Irish fighters at the top. So it was like I really loved a lot of the other fighters, like Mike Tyson and stuff, who I've been quite fortunate enough to meet a few times. He's an amazing human being. So just other fighters, but since then I've been very lucky. I am, one of my closest friends is Carl Frampton. I speak to Carl every day. So I'm very lucky to speak to a lot of Michael Conlon is a good friend of mine. He lived out here for a while. So I'm lucky in that I get a lot of access to high-end fighters from where we're from. And so I love the sport, like I said, because I see so much. Like when Tyson Fury, his first fight with Deontay Wilder, when he got up, I remember it was one of the few moments. I think there's been two sporting moments where I've actually broke down in tears watching them. Well, first one was when Frampton beat Santa Cruz in New York, and the second one was when Tyson Fury got up, because again I'd seen so much of my own struggle in that, of wanting to lie down and give up, but finding just something inside of you to get up and not and just keep going and keep fighting. And this is why I love boxing, because I think it's a very lonely sport. I think when you're in a ring, it's not like football where you can rely on your teammates. It's just you and every insecurity that you have, and we all have insecurities, every single one of us. So I love the spirit of fighters, that even the ones that lose, because the courage it takes to get in and do that is incredible. So for me, boxing was being metaphorical of my own life and my own struggle of climbing out of Belfast and the madness that I grew up in, and making something that my mum and dad can be proud of. That was all I ever wanted to do, was so that my mum and dad could be proud of me. And anything else, now my kids, of course, my kids couldn't give a shit what I, but hopefully some point in the future, I don't care that they're proud of me for doing anything like this. I just care that they'd be proud of me for not giving up and keep fighting.
Absolutely. Look, I think boxing is, what you said, very metaphorical. I think even my interest in boxing began because of the fact that my father isn't interested in many sports, but boxing was his passion. watching. And when I was very young, I started from him, and that was the kind of togetherness that we had.
Brilliant.
When I was younger, and still to this day, that we would still watch a highlight on a Sunday morning, or we might watch a live event. It was a very big fight. So from my perspective, it's something similar to yourself in terms of it's definitely more than just a sport. It's what it actually represents.
Well, we were talking about football, and about football coming back. Football clearly, whatever the sport is, it clearly means more than just a sport, right? There's meaning in life to it, and people find it in different things. So for me, and it's great that you can connect with your dad on that stuff. I do the same with my own dad, and it's great because now I'm my 13-year-old. He'll sit and watch fights with me. He's a big boxing fan. And it's great for us to be able to connect like that. And he's very lucky to get to meet a lot of high-end fighters, to get tons of boxing stuff. And he's very, very fortunate that he gets to be able to do that. So, I think we're very lucky in the sense of where we come from, because that, first of all, I have no doubt if I was from here, I wouldn't have the relationships with Irish fighters that I do. So we're lucky we come from a small country where we do stick together.
Absolutely. 100%. One final question for you, Phil, in relation to the boxing side of things. Obviously, I've seen your tweet today about the rematch of AJ and the two fights of AJ and Fury.
Yeah.
If Fury was to win both those fights, where would that put him in terms of the heavyweight history of I suppose the Mount Rushmore? Would he be the top 5 ever with those 2 wins?
I don't know, because I think when you go back to the 70s of George Foreman, Ali, you've, of course, Mike Tyson, Ken Norton, Larry Holmes were just tremendous fighters. Tyson is an exceptional fighter. He's very, very difficult. He's man 7 foot. For a 7 foot guy, his boxing technique is sensational. I mean, I was at his second fight in Vegas, at the first one too. And one of the things that's just really surprising is how nimble he is on his feet. And I think AJ will struggle with his style. And so I think definitely in the top 10, but top 5, I don't know, because I think if you go back to those Ken Norton, those guys, Joe Frazier, they got all bang. And Tyson's been dropped a few times, and he was dropped by a cruiserweight in Steve Cunningham. But this is the thing with the heavyweight division, 240-pound man connecting on your chin. I don't care who you are, you're getting knocked out. So this is why AJ still has a chance, because anybody can be knocked out. But I think he would definitely be in the top 10. He's a magnificent fighter.
Would he go ahead of Lennox Lewis in terms of British?
I don't even want to call him British. I would say probably if he unifies the division and wins all those belts, I would say so, because Lennox lost to Hassan Rahman in a fight he shouldn't have lost, and I comfortably in the rematch. Lewis is a very, very good fighter. I think a prime Tyson would have beat him, but I think because Fury, what he came back from, to be back at the pinnacle of the sport, a sport that's so cruel, it's so difficult to do, I would put him ahead of him, yeah.
Yeah, I would too. And I think it's that struggle you go back to, I suppose, how much it actually means to him.
Incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he's put so much good into this world. I think he's getting back. He's hard work, not only in the ring but outside the ring.
Well, just on that, I mean, when I was uploading pictures last year of whenever I was with Mike Tyson, people were criticizing me because of his past criminal record, and with Tyson, some of the things that he said, Tyson Fury as well. I think that it is important. It's up to people to decide for their own. None of us are perfect, right? I've done things that are deplorable. I've said things that are deplorable. I've done things that I'm totally ashamed of, that I wish I could go back and undo. But I don't think any human being, unless there's maybe one or two things, in my opinion, that are irredeemable. and there maybe child abuse or sexual abuse of a child or something like that, and I cannot forgive that. But most positions in life are redeemable by, when Kobe Bryant died out here, a lot of people want to bring up what happened at the beginning of his career in Colorado, but after that, Kobe Bryant dedicated his life to women's sports, to helping women in sports, to helping women in life. What else do you want from the guy? I think that's the penance that you can pay when you commit a crime like that, is that, okay, your debt to society from this point forward is not only to never to repeat it, but also learn from it and to do good in society. Because anyone who judges, we're all hypocrites, every single one of us. And we're all imperfect, we're all impure. And that's just the way the world is. Everything has polarity, everything is good and bad. And if everything was permanently good, there'd be no bad. We wouldn't, we need bad to recognize good, and everyone has that. And so I think Tyson Fury, in my opinion, I detested him in 2016 for what he said, for what came out of his mouth. I thought it was disgraceful. But I think it's testament to him that people like me and others have completely forgiven him for that, because he has paid his debt and has helped so many people since then, which is all you can ask for a guy.
100%. Thanks for that, Bill.
No problems, lads.
Phil, just one final question just before we wrap up.
No problem.
Just in relation to the whole fighting side of things. Conor McGregor on the weekend came out and retired for the third time. Do you believe this is a legitimate retirement, or is this just another negotiation tactic with the UFC?
Look, when you think about what makes a man fight, right? I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about fame. I'm talking about what puts a kid through the ropes or in an octagon, right? When most people run from pain, most people, the idea of getting even an injection, they'll run from. There's that, whatever that is, doesn't die. That's what brings fighters out of retirement, always. Because in their head, your faculties don't slow down, your body slows down. And so you see things and you think you can still do them. Fighters they're hard to retire. Conor McGregor, if he's given the right fight, will come out of retirement. Nobody takes him serious when he says he's retiring. I don't believe it. I think, he will get the right fight and come out of retirement. I think he's still the biggest draw in UFC. I have my doubts that the best McGregor beats the best Khabib. I just think their styles don't match well. I think Khabib is just an exceptional wrestler and he's very difficult. I think McGregor's got a brilliant left hand. If he hits you right, fine. But, problem with McGregor is he became too big. So you can't, what he did in UFC when he fought Khabib never would have happened in boxing. You never would have been 2 years out of an octagon where they were in and step back into a world title fight. You'd have had warm-up fights. But McGregor cost too much for the UFC to have warm-up fights. So when you come out of the ring and then go back in against an active world champion, the odds are insane that you were going to beat him. So McGregor's at a point where he needs to stay active. He hasn't been active enough. And so if this lasts throughout the year and he's inactive, then he should retire, because I think he's going to start getting beat. It's going to hurt his legacy. But he's just been too long out of the octagon. That can't happen. And I honestly, I think it's just a game with the UFC, but they need him. He's still their biggest draw by far. So, but on the plus side of that, he has been an inspiration to a lot of young kids. So we will have young talent coming up, whether it's in boxing or UFC, in those sports, male and female. Same with Katie Taylor. So, it's not going to be a one-off anymore.
Absolutely. And one thing I will say about McGregor, he opened up the door for MMA in Ireland, I believe.
He sure did.
Like SBG was kind of just based in Dublin, but now you have SBGs all over the country. We have here in Clonmel, in our local town, we have an SBG here. Like for a small town, like a place in Tipperary, to have a gym like that as well. Like, so he's been the catalyst for Irish MMA. Like
he certainly has.
The night.
He's done a lot of things outside the octagon I don't agree with. I think that's fair to say. But in terms of, what he did at UFC was totally unprecedented. I mean, imagine you're a cricketer and you go to the New York Yankees and you say, give me $100 million for one game. because I'm good at swinging a bat. And I say, aye, all right. I mean, that guy went to boxing and I got 100 million for one fight because he was good, a top UFC fighter. I mean, there's top end boxers don't get that their whole career. I mean, what he did was just truly unbelievable. 4 years from being a plumber to being the biggest draw in combat sports, which is extremely hard to do. You know, I think he deserves huge credit for what he did in his career. I think, you know, he's definitely someone that will leave a legacy for other young kids to come up. And, you know, boxing and UFC gets a bad rap, but, you know, these gyms are absolutely crucial for young kids who, you know, have grown up in poverty or grown up with no father or grown up. These gyms provide so much more to these kids than just, you know, an opportunity to fight. And a lot of these kids grow up with anger issues that need to be channeled into something like boxing, and why we've had so many good fighters, because the pressure that creates a fighter, you don't get rich kids becoming fighters because they don't know the struggle. They don't know what it's like to not have anything. So I think he's provided an example to a lot of kids that this can be done. Again, what we were talking about confidence that we can succeed.
Absolutely. And look, I hope from, like, I'm a big McGregor fan. Jamie, I'll tell you, like, I talk to Jamie and work every day nearly about MMA and boxing or whatever, like, and we were saying, like, when I thought anyway, at least, that McGregor maybe back in 2016 when he was on that run, when he won the second world title, like, maybe that version of McGregor maybe gives Khabib a better go. But again, as you said, Khabib's ground game is just a whole different level. Do you know what I mean? And maybe
certainly that was his peak, but once he takes the fight with Mayweather, he basically sold his career for that fight because he took too long out of the octagon. And again, to get back in, you need warm-up fights because ring rust is a real thing. And he's just cost too much money for the UFC to do that with. And so when he said he wasn't, I honestly think he did this because he felt slanted that he was asked to be a late replacement and didn't want to do it. And he said he's not a replacement fighter, and it's just an ego game with the UFC. Yeah.
And look, I just hope, I want to see him return, but with the pandemic and no fans, and as Dana White said, like, that you can't really lose out on a Conor McGregor gate. Like, do you know, I don't think we'll see him fight in 2020 again.
Well, I don't think it's wise for any Irish fighter to fight like this unless it is really genuinely a heavily stacked fight where you really should win it comfortably, because most popular Irish fighters bring huge gates, and that's a massive plus for them. You know, so you know, Carl Frampton was going to fight for third division world title against Jamal Herring. And I've told him many times, he'll tell you himself, that he doesn't want to fight with the crowd there because it's a massive plus to Herring. You know, Jamal Herring, you know, he couldn't fill a living room. And so for us, you know, Frampton would fill a whole stadium, no problems. For Jamal Herring's a really nice guy, but it would be a massive advantage to Jamal Herring, not to Carl. So Irish fighters, you know, this is why promotion companies all across the world want to sign them, because there's just a couple of people that are like this. Mexicans are like this, where they bring huge support. The British fighters are like this, that bring huge support. And the Irish fighters are like this, that bring huge support. This is why you know, Lomachenko is the Lionel Messi of boxing, but doesn't bring a huge number of fans. If he was Irish, he'd be filling stadiums out everywhere.
Absolutely. And he's, as you said, like, he's probably the best boxer around, like Lomachenko. He's unbelievable. His skill, like, he's so slick, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's just a genius. You know, he's just a sensational fighter, and I've been lucky enough to see him live a couple of times, and it's a privilege. He's just a really humble guy, really nice, down-to-earth guy, but he's really a featherweight, you know, a boxing featherweight, not a UFC featherweight, totally different. 126, but you know, sensational fighter. But if he was Irish, Jesus Christ,
he'd explode.
Yeah, of course. This is why promoters around the world want Irish fighters, because they fill arenas.
Absolutely. Phil, thanks very much for coming on tonight.
Lads.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you.
Reach out to me anytime, lads. Sorry, give me a bit slow to get back on Instagram. I really don't use Instagram not that much. But just message me on Twitter and I'll get back to you. And I'll DM you my number. Just WhatsApp me or something. That's the best way to get hold of me. But best of luck, everything else. I hope it all goes well for you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Phil.
No problem.
Thank you.
It's a
Very
pleasure.
much. Have a
Cheers,
good evening.
boys. All the best, lads. See ya.
Take care, Phil.
See ya.
Yeah, bye.